Thank you, Nobel. Thank you, SIUK, for organizing this. It's very nice, and it's a pleasure every time I'm invited and share a bit of what we do and what we can do to help people with scleroderma. I must say that we have the same mission. We don't provide much information, but we do provide support, and we do a lot of research, and really our vision is a world where scleroderma will not cause you troubles. So there is so much to talk about clinical trials, and I will give you just a brief introduction so that we have a bit of a chat after that. And because it's a complex world, and it's a world that has been not available for people with scleroderma for a long time, where things have changed, and we have so many clinical trials now, so it's important that you understand what's there. So, of course, I will not talk about how we design clinical trials, what is behind them. I want just to offer a bit of a simple guide for you and what they are and why they matter, both for you and for the patients that we still don't know. So,
I wonder if you could speak up a little.
I will. Apologies. There you go. So, there are two types of clinical trials. Yeah, one group is called observational, and the other one is called interventional. The observational studies are studies. So all studies involve people, and they need patients. So, and they're real partnership between patients and doctors. Now, in the observational studies, we don't change any medication. We don't give any new medication. We just try to understand patterns of disease. We're just trying to understand when digital ulcers happen, in what group of people happen digital ulcers, and when they return rather than don't, and so on. So they are studies where we're trying to learn about the disease at group level, and we learn about the patterns of disease. Now, these are funded studies. They're funded by the NHS, the research part of the NHS that is trying to improve the way we care for scleroderma, and is trying to improve the way also we manage complications, so that we try to get into hospital and into clinic only people that really need it. And they're funded by SIUK too, and I will give you an example. So what are the benefits of these studies? They are of great benefit for the patients that we don't know yet. They're great benefit because we understand better how to manage disease. But there's also benefits for people involved in the studies, because through these exercises, we have a very accurate and sometimes an increased number of screening methods, okay? Because we really try to understand the disease in every little details. And so we do, thanks to this funding, tests that we wouldn't do. And so through those tests, you can detect early any complication that you might not be aware of. This is an example. It's a study for which I started back in 2014, and it was funded by NIHR, and then it's been funded by SIUK and the Kennedy Trust. And it's called STRIKE, Stratification for Risk of Progression in Scleroderma. What we do is a study that is led by Leeds, but involves a lot of other centers in UK, and we see simply everybody every 6 months, and we do all the tests that we would do, plus a number of other tests. We invented an MRI of the hands to predict new digital ulcers. We're doing an MRI of the bowels now. We found some blood tests that can tell us how active is scleroderma. And so it's really a study that is trying to understand better how we can predict complications in scleroderma and how we can stratify patients. What does it mean, stratify? It means that although everybody has a diagnosis of scleroderma, not all needs the same test, not all needs the same frequency of appointments. And so this is what these studies are. And of course I will not go into the details, but one example that I just presented here, I don't know how many of you have noticed, but the British Society of Rheumatology just finished, and I presented the results of what we could do thanks to SIUK funding and the Kennedy Trust funding, when we learned that the moment we diagnose scleroderma is not when scleroderma starts, it's the moment when scleroderma becomes apparent enough that people realize, but there have been sometimes years of symptoms, subtle, Raynaud is always almost there, some other symptoms. And so we started, we asked back in 2018 as a UK to fund this pilot study in people that just had Raynaud's and the ANA antibodies and study their skin with skin biopsies. And we learned so much about the biology of the disease even before we can detect skin fibrosis. And now let's go into the proper clinical trials. These are studies that test the efficacy of a new treatment. So we want to either find a better treatment, so we test a new drug, or we repurpose a drug used for something else, we see whether it works in scleroderma. And why they are important? They're important because, of course, it's the only way we can have new treatment for scleroderma. They help us to understand disease progression, and of course they improve long-term outcome. If you see what are the drugs that are currently approved to be used in people with scleroderma, this is a summary that we published 1.5 years ago for the EULAR recommendation for treatment of systemic sclerosis. You see that we call systemic sclerosis a group of different manifestations, and we don't treat scleroderma or systemic sclerosis itself. We just treat the complications. And you recognize some drugs here from the calcium channel blockers, the sildenafil, the PD-5 inhibitor, the iloprost, and so on. Now, the important thing to note is that you see these shades of green here from A to D. This is the level of evidence that we have for those drugs, all achieved through clinical trials. So if we did not have clinical trials, we would not have any of these drugs. Why is that case? Because a doctor cannot decide to give a treatment unless there is evidence that that treatment has some level of efficacy. And the only way of determining that is through clinical trials. Now, the elephant in the room here, I don't know if you all know this saying, this Indian saying, that there were blinded scientists touching an elephant and nobody recognized the elephant. One thought it was a wall, one thought that the task was something else. Really, still today, unfortunately, we don't treat systemic sclerosis as it is. We treat only the little parts. And this is one of the aim of our research program in Leeds. Now, what kinds of treatments or studies? As I mentioned, there can be a completely new medication, something that has been invented and either on purpose for scleroderma or for something else, and if it turns out that could be useful in scleroderma, or an existing drug they use in rheumatoid or in lupus or in other conditions, in Sjogren, or a treatment of specific symptoms. Now, clinical trials, they're not all the same. There are 4 different types. The first, which is really the observational study, is called phase 0 study, where there is no drugs involved, no new drugs involved, and is what I told you, we're trying to understand the disease. Then, when there is a new drug, and it's never been tested before, there is a phase 1 trial. Phase 1 trial usually involves a very small amount of people, healthy volunteers first, and then patients, just to make sure that there is no side effects. Once that is the case, then there is a second stage, which is phase 2, where the intervention is tested. And now, in the past 5 years, we always allow this intervention to be tested on top of the current standard of care. So patients do have access to all the treatment, and then on top, they are tested this intervention. If that gives a good signal that there could be the case that that drug works, then there is the final study that usually involves hundreds of people around the world, and there are so many going on in scleroderma now, where, and this study are what we call statistically powered, meaning that there is enough people to understand whether the drug really makes a difference in that specific outcome. Can be the lung, the skin, the digital ulcers, the joint, or scleroderma altogether. Clinical trials don't finish there. Once they are approved, once the drug is approved, it starts a long-term observation. Because, of course, clinical trials usually last 6 months, 1 year, and we don't know the long-term effects of those drugs. And so the phase 4 studies are when the drug is now available through the pharmacies, but we still study long-term outcome, and we see whether there is anything that we need to know. Now, before we go a bit more into detail, there are some words that you will see associated with clinical trials and may cause confusion. First is double blind. What does it mean, double blind? Are you giving your health in the hands of a blind doctor? So the best way to assess whether a drug is really effective is that neither the doctor or you know whether you're having the drug or you're having just a dummy drug, what we call a placebo, okay? Why is that the case? Because these clinical trials have a strong commercial value, and they want to be absolutely sure that there is no biases, that nobody is influenced by interpreting the results. The second is this placebo. People think, oh, okay, there is this knowledge that also people in the placebo arm in clinical trials do better than people that are not in trials. And this is perhaps the most important take-home message to bring home. Why is that the case? It's because people are just self-healing or suggesting by the trial and they think they're better. That is not the case. We learn why this is the case, and it's because in a clinical trial, patients have access to doctors a lot more frequently than they wouldn't through standard of care. All clinical trials have at least 2 weekly or 4 weekly appointments with your doctor. Things that if I ask a raise of hand, I don't think I will see many hands up. How many of you see their doctor every 4 weeks? There you go. So that is that was a laughter in Edinburgh. It was a laugh. So that is the reason why, regardless of the intervention, placebo or new intervention, people on clinical trials tend to do better because by seeing their doctor every 4 weeks, if there is anything that is popping up, it's detected right away. So that's a big advantage. And then is the treatment escalation. People think, oh my goodness, I'm signing up for a clinical trial, it is 1 year, and now I can do nothing in these 12 months. That is not the case. These clinical trials are thoroughly vetted by the MHRA, which is our authority, and by ethics. And if at any time in a clinical trial we detect that there is either a signal for that this trial is not right for you or something else, or you need another medication, then there are always routes within the clinical trial, either by interrupting the trial or within the trial, to take the medication that you need. And that's another reason why there is a better outcome in people in clinical trial. So, in clinical trials. So now, not all the trials are the same. We're talking about testing new intervention, and the most common design is this randomized controlled trial. So people are selected because in case of a trial for lung involvement, they have some sort of lung involvement, or digital ulcers, they already had a digital ulcer, and so on. And then they're randomized either to the drug or to something that looks like the drug but has nothing in it. And this usually happens for a variable time between 6 months to 1 year, and then is measured the efficacy. And after that, most of the time, patients are allowed to be on the drug, all of the patients. The other design is not so common, but also present in scleroderma trials, is this crossover design. Crossover means that there is the randomization, and somebody gets the placebo, somebody gets the drug, but after a given time, there is a pause, and then the opposite happens, okay? So the people that were having the drugs were having the placebo, the people who had the placebo have the drug, so that all people will test both interventions. And as I mentioned, in most of the late phase clinical trials, one of the advantages is that you can have access to the drug after the trial. So this drug will usually take 2 or 3 years to become available, but people in the trial will, if they want, they can have access to the drug. Now, the last type of design is this platform trial design. What does it mean? If we want to test more than one drug at the same time, people may be randomized to different arms of a study. For instance, this is the one example is called Conquest. It's currently recruiting also in UK, and it's for interstitial lung disease, lung involvement. There are 2 drugs that are tested, and people are, oh, there is a laser here, and people are randomized either to product A or product B. Within this first randomization, then they are randomized again to the drug or the placebo. The advantage is that the second randomization is not 50-50, but it's 66-33. Okay, so they have 2 out of 3 chances of being on the drug, and so this is more effective for people and also for people running the trial. Now, What are the benefits of joining a trial? You may access new treatment early, you can receive close medical monitoring, as I mentioned, and they contribute to research that help others. Some patients benefit directly, and you can see right away during a trial, but this, of course, is not always the case. There is not only benefits, there are also some potential risk, and this is why it's important that you discuss any potential clinical trial with your doctors, and the possible risk including new treatments may not work, and so in the end you have not had any direct benefit, or there are side effects that we did not know, and then of course there is the extra visits, which on one side are good, on the other side they take time. Can I take part in clinical trials? Yes, of course. It's important that you ask your doctor all the time. So the doctor will help you to understand which trials are available. If they're not available in your city, you ask SIUKs, which are the trials in UK? Most of these trials allow travel, okay? And so if it's not available directly in your town, ask SIUK, they have a nice map, they know who to call, and we'll see whether we can help. It's important to keep in mind a few things. At any time in a clinical trial, you can ask questions. It's not a mortgage. It's not something you cannot come out of, okay? You are always in charge, and any decision you take can be revoked at any time. You change your mind. You want to go to Australia for 3 months. It's fine. So you can leave the trial at any time. You receive clear information before joining, and if you're not sure, you can discuss. All doctors are trained to get informed consent in the proper way. And, of course, the participation is always voluntary. And it's never a burden economically because all the visits are reimbursed, all the travel is reimbursed. So before our question, two key messages. Clinical trials are essential. If we did not have clinical trials, we did not have all of the drugs that I showed you. And at the moment, there are at least 18 to 20 trials active in UK and in Europe that are testing different things for scleroderma. They offer hope for better treatments, and they also help advancing science. I remember when I started to study scleroderma, we had 3 or 4 drugs available, and now you've seen how many we have. So it's been only 25 years that I've been doing this, but hopefully in the next 15 we'll see a lot more. So this is the group in Leeds. It's scleroderma. I always try to acknowledge them. It's a big bunch of people that are studying. They're all passionate about improving life of people with scleroderma, and I want to leave you here with your rights as participants in questions so that we can take questions. Thank you for your attention.